to fire.
How's it going, everyone? We are live from the sixth annual Comms vNext. We've been in business 7 years, so everyone had to skip COVID. So the sixth annual Comms vNext conference. Josh Blalock here. I'm talking to a group of awesome people from Microsoft. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but we're covering the keynote that was just covered here at the event. And we're going to dive into some topics that are somewhat familiar to us and a little bit new to us. So it's going to be fun today. I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Ron Pessner. Ron, can you tell us your role at Microsoft? And thank you again for delivering the keynote today.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Josh. Thanks for having us. We're thrilled to be here. My role at Microsoft is I'm a product leader responsible for modern collab in Office. So our job is to help people work together and integrate with the rest of the M365 suite.
Awesome. Karuana.
Right. Hello. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm Karuana Gatimu, and I run the Customer Advocacy Group in Collaborative Apps and Platform. And we're responsible for all the Microsoft 365 and Copilot emerging services, really helping people get the most out of it and running communities at scale and getting to come to fun things like this and meet great people. So it's we're really happy to be here.
It's great to have you back here, obviously on the MVP side. The community is near and dear to our hearts. So thanks for being back here again. And then on this side, Jake.
Hey, I'm Jake. I'm a product manager on the Microsoft Loop team working with Ron, and I'm really excited to show you some demos of some really exciting work we're doing and see how we're integrating this into the M365 product suite.
It's great to talk about things, but demos are, that's everyone wants to see the demo. They want to see it in action, which I think went really well today in the keynote. So
yes, Jake did a great job.
And before I dive straight into this, I just want to say a quick thank you to Partner IQ for sponsoring this fantastic podcast booth at the event. It was great last year. It's even bigger this year. And this is fun to be doing the first one here with y'all. So let's dive in. At the heart of what we were talking about today on stage is AI. AI is, it's the buzzword of all buzzwords at this stage. But AI is just such a wide, sprawling topic. So we're going to focus in a little bit more there. But you had some interesting stats during the presentation today about the rapid adoption that is taking place with AI, in particular, compared to some other major events in technology history, like the internet. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what that speed is like, what we're dealing with here when we talk about AI?
You bet, Josh. It's really remarkable when you think, so we think about this in terms of tech diffusion, so how quickly the tech is diffusing out. And it's important to remember with AI, it's not just about AI. Like, we've been on this journey for several decades. So foundation laid by the internet, the smartphone,
right.
Social media, really thinking about these adoption rates. And what's happened with AI is we saw getting to 100 million users is the fastest. It happened in 3 months with ChatGPT. A little over a year ago, and it's really remarkable when you think about how quickly this spread. You probably all remember that moment over the holidays, not this past year, but the year before, when we came back to work. Literally everyone's mom had asked them about ChatGPT, and so you're like, okay, this is now part of the mainstream about how to think about AI. And I think when you think about this tech diffusion and what AI could potentially do, it's interesting because AI is very much a general purpose technology. This is something that could be applied in a bunch of different places. Yeah. But the thing that's interesting about it is, like, an analogy that we've used internally is it's a bit like the printing press, where you think about, like, okay, this is something that could power a whole bunch of ancillary benefit and really be an interesting way that work transforms, or transforms the way people work.
Yeah, AI is, you said the 3 months for 100 million users. That slide had a couple other things, like the internet, that how long it took to get to 100 million users.
Yeah.
Nothing near 3 months.
No.
Close.
No.
Yeah.
People have really leaned into it, and also I think it's important to remember that the technology is spectacular, but we really have to make sure that we're democratizing opportunity along with that. People have concerns. One of the reasons my mother-in-law asked me about AI and ChatGPT over that same holiday was she was worried about it, right? People's understanding of the technology comes from science fiction movies, not really fact. And so as leaders in this era of AI, it's important that we demystify what it is and what it does and how it's going to benefit them. Because if you also think about it, people have a tremendous amount of technology around them that they use about 12 to 22% of. when you think about it, right? And that's even true in the Microsoft
Yeah, I can believe
ecosystem,
that.
right? Like, do you actually program your coffee pot to go off before you get up in the morning?
Yeah.
Right? I have
It's
a
cool,
smart
but
one.
it's
I
great.
do it, right?
Yeah.
My oven will over Wi-Fi bring me new recipes. I happen to use them. How many people do?
Right.
And so when we think about that, we have to understand that this journey with AI is going to be about getting it into people's lives in ways that is easy and meaningful for them, that they feel empowered by, not assaulted by, as sometimes people do with technology.
Right.
Such a great point.
It could feel that way. I mean, and like you said, because there is just so much coming at you.
Yes.
So demystifying is definitely key, because
Yep.
it's a very general purpose thing we're talking about. We're starting high level to set the table. We're going to get a little more specific here. We're in sunny Denver, by the way, apparently. So it's
I love it.
yes, it's
We
good.
brought
It's
the
good
sunshine.
weather. Yeah, good stuff. So let's kind of talk a bit more then about the high level of this presentation today. Comms vNext has historically been a very UC-focused niche conference, right? We've had keynotes that had things about telephony, SBCs even, very meeting-centric, phone-centric. But in the last couple of years, we've started to acknowledge and branch out that the Teams platform is bleeding into so many other areas, and so many things are tying in. And so your presentation today really delved into where that starts to happen. Can you give at a high level just some of the pain points that were highlighted during the presentation about what we're trying to solve for as we start to bring in these other components? We talk about Loop and Copilot, and how that starts to shake up the world of a Teams administrator.
Yeah, you bet. So, it's interesting to think about content, collaboration, and communication together. And that's really, when you talk, Josh, about like how unified communications is evolving, thinking about, well, how do we now how do you make it about workflows and really make it easy for people to get their work done? And sometimes they need to actually do things together in the context of a conversation. And so how do we now make that possible? So before we get into solutions, like a lot of the problems people are faced with is, we're all experiencing this today, but like information that you need for your work is living in multiple storage locations, multiple SharePoint sites, multiple conversations, multiple emails, multiple documents. It is a yard sale. Like, it's literally all over the place. And so how do you wrestle with that and find what you're looking for? That's a major pain point.
Yeah.
Second thing is, and we've talked about this for a long time, but we've done a phenomenal job making it easy for people to generate and create content. And so now, the world's information just keeps exploding.
Yeah.
And if you're in a technical field, it is now very, very hard for you to stay current in your field. It's really
Exactly.
hard.
Technical, healthcare,
Yes.
anything with policy regulation, FinServ, financial services, where there's so many regulations that are changing.
Yeah.
There's just so much information, and what that's doing is it's leading to a tremendous amount of change fatigue and meeting fatigue in people, which, as we all know, if your brain is fatigued, you're not going to learn anything new, and you're also not going to remember where you put that file,
Yeah.
right? And we at Microsoft can do a lot better at this, and that's why I'm so excited about Loop. I've been in this ecosystem a long time, old school SharePoint person, original Teams person before Preview. But Loop makes me extremely excited and I use it constantly because it allows me to bring all that together in a dynamic way. The other thing that I love about the product also is it represents a lot of the new Microsoft. Our culture has changed tremendously with the rise of AI, but also the rise of products like Loop. We're really working together differently and smoothing out scenarios that have historically been so painful. Guest access, anyone? Anyone want to talk about guest access? Oh, please don't. But I think it's really important to note that the architecture of this product is designed to simplify those sorts of scenarios that we've heard customer feedback about for at least a decade.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that because, if the technology doesn't help you build empathy with your customer base, doesn't understand that the real pain point that they have is stress and a very complicated life and dealing with the pace of change, then we're not doing some of our best work at Microsoft. We're not using this amazing ecosystem with folks like you and events like this for good.
Yeah.
Right? And which is also underlying some of the fears around AI, is that it's not going to be used for good. But, I'm here because I believe it can be, and I see that we're doing that. And Loop is a beautiful example of how it sets itself up based on customer feedback in elegant ways as a product. And then you empower that with AI tools like Copilot. And then all of a sudden you have an employee who is, really more productive, really less stressed. It's not just slideware, it's actually happening.
Yeah. And meetings also are a major pain point. A lot of what Karuana's talking about is people have defaulted back to, okay, we need to have a meeting. And, and then you get meeting overload, and it's hard to keep up with all of
Need a meeting to prep for that meeting.
Exactly.
And,
Multiple
dear.
meetings.
Don't get me
ready.
started on that prep for the prep meeting. Oh my Lord.
It's a lot. So that stress is very real, right? And so part of what, when we think about solutioning, we're trying to figure out how can we reduce that stress? How can we get the information that you need at your fingertips? How can we make it possible for you and your team to work seamlessly together? And really kind of, when you do this, the tools sort of are not in the forefront. It's really about your human connection, working with people, getting things done, and the tools sort of should fade to the background a bit. Right? So like the tech should be in the background supporting the outcomes that we're shooting for, not an end in of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because the technology really isn't always the problem, right? It's, humans have their own idiosyncrasies, and humans are the ones who make meetings effective. If we don't give them the right tools, then that's yet one more thing they need to do. But, I really believe that this technology is here to help empower us to connect more deeply with each other. Right? If I'm not hunting for that spreadsheet that had that list of things and somebody saved it on their OneDrive instead of in Teams or SharePoint where we could all get to it, then I've just wasted time where I could actually be connecting with my colleague and understanding what's important to them and how we can work better together, right?
And this is where, some of the specific application of this general purpose AI or general capabilities of AI can really help. So, one of the things that we've learned in the last year is that large language models can be incredible at summarizing information. So when you're coming into like a group project, if you could just get a summary of what's happened since you were there, that's really incredible. Like that's something that could save you a bunch of time and energy. Or a lot of times, when you're working, we're working in geo-distributed teams. Really since the pandemic, this has really accelerated. And the purpose of that is because people want to tap into talent no matter where it is in the world.
Right.
But then you also had historically coordination costs associated with that. And so part of what we want to do is really use AI to help remove some of those coordination costs. So, when we're working together on something and Jake and I are collaborating, we need to share something with Boston, our team in Boston, we can easily create a recap of the work that we've done, use AI to say, hey, summarize all the changes I've made. And then send those to my colleagues so that they know what I've done, right? Like it's a really easy thing to do. Or status reporting could also be really transformed with AI. So there are lots of opportunities for how we see that this could really help make a lot of these stressors go away.
We got a good collection of pain points that we're trying to solve for here. We got disparate data kind of all over the place. We got what you had just mentioned with the meeting side of that, and getting the technology out from in front of us and letting us just collaborate without having to think about the technology too much. And we saw a little bit of this on display today, and we get a chance to see that on display here. Now, we have a demo, right, in this space?
Yes, we do, Josh.
All right.
Excited to share with you all.
Let's jump into that.
So as Ron mentioned, AI is a transformative tool that's really helping team members spend less time finding information and more time working with each other. And so I want to actually take us back 3 weeks ago when I was informed that I'd be doing a live demo for today. Super excited, but I was also quite nervous too. And so let me share my screen and show you how this started. I was added to a chat with a bunch of team members, and what I would say is this is quite messy. A lot of information, a lot of decisions, but a lot of questions. And it was a bit intimidating. But what's great is with Copilot in Teams, you can immediately ask it simple questions like, hey, can you summarize the decisions that have been made and show me the list of unresolved items? And this made me feel much more comfortable getting an idea of where we're at and what's next. So this is Copilot in action, helping summarize something to save time. The next thing I'd like to share is a way for our team members to collaborate more effectively together instead of having a bunch of back and forth emails and chats. What you can do is insert loop components right into your chat. And this is a collaborative canvas that your team members can all co-edit together instead of switching apps between teams and somewhere else. So this is a really powerful way to start making forward progress on your project and turn this meeting into a project.
Actually, Jake, I'm just going to interject super quick because for Josh's benefit, and for the comms vNext community, this is a great example of bringing collaboration on content right into a communication stream. So it's no longer do you have to switch tools or switch context even. You're able to just right there in line start collaborating. And we all know this is where a lot of work starts. A lot of work starts, it's that spark of an idea, you're having a conversation, and then you want to get started. And then you want to make sure that the tools enable you to grow up from that conversation into a full project.
And I want to add one other piece there as well, because as much as we all love Teams, and as I said, OG Teams person here, there's lots of folks who also work in email. The magic of that loop component is that I can share it with people who work in Teams and people who work in email and people who want to see it on a SharePoint page, and it's all the same thing. Right. And that is empathetic collaboration in action, because you're meeting people where they are versus trying to always bring people where you are comfortable. And this was actually a personal lesson I had to learn, because I'm a very team-centric way of work. That's just the way I sat in that engineering team for a long time. I'd kind of abandoned email. I checked it maybe twice a day. It wasn't my thing anymore. And the people I worked with, I didn't have to. Well, my job has changed. It's much bigger now. I work with a larger group of people, and I have to come back to email.
Yeah.
So, I was doing that somewhat reluctantly, to put it nicely. But I found that way now to be able to use Loop to bridge the gap, right? So that I can work where I need to work, where I'm comfortable and where I find everything, but share that more broadly. And so this is brilliance beyond measure in the way that Microsoft is approaching this with Loop, because so often we have shipped our organizational seams. Anybody who's been in this space a long time will know that. And this is evidence of us moving beyond that, of us thinking more broadly about really actioning customer feedback, about really listening and having that empathy at a technical architecture level, right? And that's the difference between us and some other company, right? Because our technical architecture is incredibly important and very powerful, and we're well governed and secure. And so these things really put us in a position to help people as they step into this era of AI and have their personal aha moment, like you just showed with Copilot in that scenario. Because learning Copilot isn't like learning anything else you've ever learned before.
No.
Right? You're having a conversation in your own language and terms with this system.
Right.
And you have to have your own personal moment with it before you can then start to think about how can it benefit the team? How can it benefit my company? Why do I care? I've been a voice person all my career. Why do I not care about this? Because it's coming to your administration experiences. It's coming to your configuration experiences. It is going to free you up to do even higher value work.
Yeah.
And so you do need to care no matter who you are in this business right now, because these types of capabilities are coming and they're going to change your job.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to change your job in a positive way to free you up for that stuff that, only you, the human, can actually do.
Yeah. That's...
Yeah. Should we go back to the demo?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd love
yes.
to. Yeah, so one thing you mentioned, Ron, which I thought was interesting as well, is what can we do to make meetings more efficient? There are a number of problems that we experience still to this day around meetings, and there's more meetings than ever before with this hybrid workplace where people are geo-distributed and working in different locations. So in every Teams meeting, you can now add a loop component, and this will provide a shared space for your team to define what the agenda for the meeting will be. There's actually an interesting study. 50 years ago, Harvard determined what was the most important thing to have an effective meeting, and it was an agenda. And most meetings today don't have an agenda, and you start the first few minutes just discussing, hey, what are we here to talk about? So with this now, you and your team can define what the agenda will be before the meeting to help keep the team on track. And so for this conference, we had a brainstorming session a few weeks ago. And what's really neat is when you join a meeting, every participant in the meeting will have the agenda open on the right-hand side. So everyone immediately will have context of what this is about, even if they didn't see it before the meeting. This keeps the team grounded on what we should be here to discuss. The next problem that's very common in meetings is around taking meeting notes. The question is who should take notes, where should we take notes, is it in a different app, is it on pen and paper? So what's typical is meetings either don't have notes at all or they're siloed to another location. With Loop components during meetings, on the right-hand side, you'll see a space for the team to also take notes. And this is a live collaborative document. So everyone can take notes together. It helps encourage people to jump in and make sure everything's being tracked. And the third problem is around determining what the next steps are. There was a study where 55% of meeting participants found that there was ambiguity in what happens after this meeting. Who's doing what next? With meeting notes, you can assign follow-up tasks to set action items and assign them to people, give them due dates, and that will sync with To-Do and Planner. So your team can make sure everyone's accountable for what needs to be done, and before the task is due, you'll get an email reminder. So it's no longer the meeting driver's job to go ping people and make sure everything got done. It's all tracked for you. So it's a really great way to make meetings more efficient and address some of these problems. But as you shared before, it's really important for people to be aware of what's here and use it to be most effective with your teammates. Not worry less about the tools.
It's up to the people. As
Right,
Karuana
exactly.
said. Yeah.
But I just love this. I love the fact, now I still do ping people with their follow-up tasks, like, hey, is this done yet? But being able to also, because when you're using the tools in the way that you're showing, it's also available to you in a mobile experience as well. And I don't know about all of you, I run so much of my life off my mobile device and my other, portable tablet devices. It's really important, the elegant experience that both Loop and Planner and To-Do and these sorts of things have, because then I can see that information no matter where I am. I have a rule, and I encourage everybody to take this rule up. No agenda, no attendance. I don't go to meetings that don't have agendas, especially when they come across in a large organization from people you may or may not know. Even just say, hey, I want to introduce myself. Like, let's all have some manners, right? People are busy, and you're juggling a lot of things. So I love that, because then people can also contribute. Because if I see somebody does an agenda in Loop, I can also contribute an item to that. And then we can make that meeting even more interactive. No one wants to feel like they're sitting in a meeting that they don't need to be in, right? And so I love these tools, and they encourage positive human behavior and positive habit building, which is so important.
It goes back to the meeting for the sake of planning for another meeting.
Yes, it's a way to cope with information overload.
Right, exactly. And that's agenda is
100%.
near and dear to my heart on that. If you walk into a meeting and the agenda is we're going to prep for the next meeting, you already know it's a non-starter. So
Yeah, right. Although I will say, if you've ever run a really huge executive review at Microsoft, there are 3 meetings to prepare for those, and they're every single one of them incredibly useful. You don't want to waste those corporate vice presidents' time. You want to be well organized, because also remember, sometimes meetings are about making sure everybody feels prepared to show up.
Right.
And I'm one of those people who you can kind of throw me into the deep end, and I'm going to cope with that. That's why I'm good at disaster response. I have, worked in police departments. I've done a lot. So you can just kind of throw me in, and I'm going to deal. But that's not true of everyone, and not everybody needs to be that way. And so, like for your demonstration, you needed a little prep and a little context. That's perfectly reasonable. And so that's what some of those prep meetings are for. Right. When you use something like Loop, and you capture the information in that collaborative way, it helps to build confidence of your team members. And for those of us as leaders, that's really my job.
Yeah.
My job isn't to understand the technology or come and talk and do fun things like this. My job is to empower other people to know how to do what I do without thinking.
Yeah.
Right. And so that information sharing becomes very important, and positive, effective meetings become very important, and shared information, like information can't be in a silo. I have to get it out of my head, get it into a document, share it with others, right? So that they can have the confidence that something is going to happen, well and in a thought out manner.
Yeah, this is one of the things that's really nice for us, is thinking about the role of a Loop workspace for that specifically, because then if you have meetings and then you also have a workspace where your team is working and bringing in not just the information you're working on, but actually doing work there, it's a great way. It actually cuts down on the number of meetings that you have to have just to keep people in sync. And so I think you're going to show us a little bit more on the demo for a Loop workspace.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be great. This is one of my favorite things, and I know more is coming on this. I'm so excited, especially if anybody out there is a user group leader or an event planner of any way, or you're doing town halls in your organization, using webinars, those Teams advanced capabilities. Being able to plan these with a Loop workspace is mind-blowing, and it's so much easier to be able to coordinate the moving pieces workspaces. Like I do this every day. I do a lot of events.
Yep.
They all have a workspace with their team. Like we have a plan for how we do this, and we're going to share that in some of our scenarios. But I love this. So please show everyone.
Yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, we've shown you first how I got introduced and told, hey, I'm going to do this demo. We had a messy chat. We used Copilot and a Loop component to get organized. Then we scheduled a Teams meeting, and we used Loop components to schedule the agenda, the meeting notes, and tasks. After the meeting was complete, might feel like we were done, but the project was just getting started. So I created a workspace to bring all of our people and all of our documents together in one shared space for us to collaborate. So let me show you that next. Here is the Loop app. You can see on the left-hand side all of our documents and pages. And you can see here, this was our meeting agenda that we just had in the last meeting. And you can see a bunch of other resources that we're collecting here. So the Loop app is a place where you can collect all your things. The left side is the workspace, and this is, you can think of it like a modern folder, but it's just a place to put all of your documents so your team has access to it in a really quick and easy way. And in the middle here is what the Loop page is all about. This is our flexible document that our teams can co-edit together, and this component opens in the Loop app right here. So let me next then show you what it's like to create new content in Loop. I'll open this untitled page, and you can see that sometimes they can be intimidating to get started, but my idea here was to create a project brief to get the team ready for what this is all about. So we have these great built-in templates that you can use. I'll select this one, and it gets you off the ground running really quickly. Now Loop is built to be both simple and beautiful, but highly capable. This allows your team to collaborate in a more effective way. So let me show you some cool ways you can insert new content very easily. All you need to do is type the /, and this opens a menu of exciting building block capabilities that you can insert into the page. Some of them you'll be familiar with, like tables, bullet lists, checklists. We've got some ways to style your content. And also some templates so you can convert a table into a task list, which syncs with To-Do and Planner, or a voting table to let people easily vote. We also integrate with Microsoft apps like GitHub and Planner and third-party apps, and more are coming in the future. So for this project brief, I wanted to organize it in a little better way. So let's first add a table of contents. And I'm going to put in a call out to say, hey team, super excited. I'm going to add some personality. My favorite emoji is the rocket ship, so we'll put that in there. And then, we built Loop as well to build more human connection with your teammates. It's not all about serious work. We wanted to make this fun and playful as well. So I can do something like add a boost. And this is a way to get the team excited and say, hey, let's celebrate for what's to come. And everyone who opens this workspace sees a fun, playful animation to just get excited for what we're about to do next. So the next part about Loop is to really help our team turn this project into progress and stay in sync and on track for our work. So I'll show you our conference planning status tracker. This was a simple table that you can use for lightweight project management. And here you can see all the tasks we were tracking. You can see the status and when we need to have the due date. And you can convert this table into really useful views, like a board view, if that's more useful for you. And you can sort and format this in any way you like. But as your project evolves, you might use more advanced productivity tools and project management tools like Planner. So we integrate with Planner and other tools to make that easy so you can grow with your project. So here you see a Planner board that's embedded right into the Loop app, so you don't have to switch between them, and you can update your tasks here. We also work with Azure DevOps, so you can sync all your tasks. And we work with third-party tools like Jira and Trello to pull all your tasks as well. So whatever productivity tools you're using, you can use them with the Loop app. And here's an example of a Figma board as well, where you can see your designs without having to switch. So it's a really easy way for teams to pull all their apps together in one place and collaborate more effectively. We're also using AI to help people get up to date on what's going on. So we have something called the workspace status. And this is using AI and Copilot to get a synthesis of all the information across all the pages and documents, whether they're Loop pages or PowerPoints or Word docs, to organize a summary of what's happening right here. So new team members who are getting pulled into this project have an easy way to catch up. You can see which pages have the most activity, the status on tasks and statuses, see what recaps you have, and you can jump right to the tasks you have on any of the pages in the workspace. So it's a really great way for people to get caught up quickly. The last thing I wanted to show you is this executive brief that we were preparing to send out to our team over email right before the event. And you can see on the top here, I used Copilot to summarize this page for me. And we're building Copilot and Loop in a collaborative way. It's not a one-on-one experience. Everyone in the document can see which information is created by Copilot. You can open this up and see the different prompts that the team's made to change this. And anyone can go in here and make differences. So you can go back in time and see, oh, this used to be a bullet list, then I made it a paragraph. And it helps you learn more about AI prompts and makes it a more collaborative experience.
Yeah, this is so cool because this is one of those things where you can help people. People are struggling to know, kind of to your point earlier,
Yeah.
like, how do I ask the system questions? And what you just showed, you can take any part of that page and turn it into a loop component. And so let's say Jake took that piece of the summary and made it a loop component. Well, the prompt history will travel with it into Teams and Outlook so
Okay.
that you can see it.
But you guys, whoa, time out. If that demo didn't just blow your mind, okay, you were an excellent demo. You're very calm. You're very cool. But like, I'm an old school SharePoint person, and I have deep envy for how easy it is to put those different components on a page. This is what we always kind of wanted SharePoint to do. I'm not saying it won't do it in the future, but I am saying it doesn't always do it today. And you have to explain co-authoring in SharePoint to make a particular page work in that sort of fluid way. That kind of fluidity is exactly what's necessary to empower deep collaboration, because it's about the people and the information, not about the tool. That was a beautiful demo. You just blew my mind. And here's another thing. That integration that you showed with Azure DevOps and Planner, that means that I can embed those things. So again, going back to my example, if people like to work where they work, if somebody wants to just live in Planner, they'll still see that. If that Planner is embedded in a Teams channel, they'll still see that, right? So everybody can really engage in different ways. And the fluidity and the flexibility of the elements in that workspace are just fantastic. Like, really, it's a big deal that we as a company have delivered something that works with that level of elegance. This is what people have been demanding from us for a very long time. And you and your team have actually delivered it. And I am a fan, if you can't tell. But that was a beautiful demo of things I don't want people to miss. I don't want them to take for granted what you all have done and the elegance that you just flowed all that through, and how it's going to show up in Teams, in email, in SharePoint, and in all these other endpoints. Right? You all are just getting started. So I'm super excited.
We are just getting started, but I am going to bring you to every product review now.
Oh.
Going forward.
Don't take it from me how amazing it is.
It's
Karuana.
beautiful. Look, I teach collaboration. I've been doing this for 25 years, long before I was a Microsoft employee, right? And so I know the pain points. And one of the reasons that I ended up inside Microsoft was I was a bit critical of the lack of elegance, of the lack of empathy, of the lack of better together cross-product thinking, right? And so that's one of the ways I got the job. And so
awesome.
it's really, really cool. And it may have taken a little while, but so the Copilot elements are wonderful, but I don't want to pass through these fundamentals, because look, customers are a little annoyed. All we talk about is Copilot now, Copilot, like rabbits. They're everywhere, right? And that's not going to stop. And so sometimes we glaze over these fundamentals, and I didn't want to. First off, you executed that beautifully, and I'm not going to put you on my other show so that you can do that for everybody, because you're so good at it. But those fundamentals are really important. They create a foundation for AI innovation that shows up as it needs to, that takes the user's needs into context and doesn't require a lot of hands-on training, right? How many times have people compared us to other suppliers with, it just works over there? Well, now it just works over here, right? And so I just love that. And I'm just so excited by the work the team is doing, because I know it's just the beginning.
Yep.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal to get this kind of thing to market.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a blast.
Oh, it's great.
It is an amazing demo, very well done. And I think one of the questions I was going to bring here was, kind of for those of us that have come from that traditional UC space, let's dive into just what Loop even means a little bit. I don't really feel like I need to ask that now. I feel like we've kind of covered that really well. And that we not only see how it executes and how it ties everything together, like to the point about finding things in email and including people, it really is that glue. And so, that's what I hope our audience is walking away with is this is what Loop means to what we're doing now in the unified communications telephony meeting space. This is why you can't ignore it, to the
That's
point
right.
where it is a very important piece of the puzzle. So I'll skip over the what is Loop. I think we've got that covered here. But the next thing I'll ask is, you in your keynote had some call-outs about some specific real-world use cases with real customers. I love that the demo centers on what you all did for Comms vNext. That's just really cool.
Isn't that
very
beautiful?
cool. But I'd love to hear a little bit more, and I'm sure everyone else will. Like, this is great, but how is this being adopted and used now in some real-world scenarios outside of of Microsoft, right?
Sure. I'll touch on this briefly, but then hand it over to Karuana to talk about. She covered some great use cases too. So,
Yeah.
lightweight project management, like starting with any project really. This is a great place to start, and we're seeing that's a very popular use case. And so simple things like I want to put together a podcast, or I want to prepare for an exec review, or I want to prepare for a customer review.
Right.
Being able to bring all that heterogeneous content in one place and create a center of gravity for your project where your team can actually do work is incredibly powerful, right? So the content creation happens within this experience, and so that's been a very, very powerful use case. We also see that there's a lot of demand to use Loop for internal documentation and wikis. So that's another really popular use case. You saw a little bit of that in the Jobware video that we shared. You know, they're using parts of Loop to create a knowledge base inside the organization, easy to access, easy to collaborate on. That's another popular one. And then
I would say a lot of us in this space should hone in on that point, because if I haven't sat in the seat 1,000 times where it's you come into a new company and the lack of documentation for what exists internally
Right.
is frightening in some cases.
Right.
So
Very
having the
frightening.
tools,
Right.
the right tools to make that streamlined and easier. To me, I'm going to underscore that piece.
Yeah,
Totally.
sometimes the biggest friction point is actually spending the time putting together a knowledge base. And
Yes.
given that Loop is so collaborative and easy to create new content and edit and co-edit and organize, it just makes it an easier tool to pull all these things together.
That's right. And one of
Yeah. And knowledge is at the center of effective Copilot experiences. So imagine having that loop with all of that documentation about your configuration, your service management best principles, all of the things that you're doing, which people can just drop in little pieces. It doesn't even necessarily have to be cohesively organized because Copilot can summarize it.
That's a great
right?
point. Yeah.
And so you don't have to spend all that time organizing your documentation. How many times have I spent evenings and weekends doing that, and it's not my favorite thing? Forget about that. Let Copilot do that part, but put it in a collaborative tool like this that enables that. I think it's really important that we connect these tools to your in particular audience because, in IT, we don't have enough people or enough resources, and the landscape is getting more and more complex.
Yeah.
And security, collaboration, and compliance are, becoming more complex and even more important than they already were. So anything that we can deliver as Microsoft to help the IT manager or the telephony person in an organization be more effective and be even more organized with less time with your hands on the keyboard is a good thing. And that's where I would start with it, is really create this knowledge base, because then you can also, extend Copilot in other scenarios with Copilot Studio, point it at that knowledge base and help your junior people skill up.
Yeah.
With knowledge that is specific to your organization. This is the true power of Copilot, is as we get into these extensibility scenarios and we start to think about how do you take your own institutional knowledge and empower it in appropriate ways to everyone in the organization to help them build their skills, right? This is the purpose of AI, is to free us from drudgery, to help us build our skills, to help us build deeper connections, because we're not sitting in a meeting taking notes. I'm actually listening and I'm present.
Yeah.
We have to think about these scenarios.
And the product part for what Karuana is saying is she's spot on, right? Where Copilot has this role to play on helping to create the documentation, and then also on the summarization part, being able to just ask questions. People want to come in and say, hey, help me understand, or I want to get up to speed on this, and being able to do that in a really efficient way is great. And then a third area that we're seeing a lot of traction with Loop is with product teams and product development teams. So think cross-functional groups getting together, design, product management, project management, developers, and these scenarios are really magical. Like, you can, if you don't know what a piece of code means, you can ask Copilot, and it will tell you inside of Loop. If you want to manage an incident response, the real-time collaborative capabilities of Loop are truly transformative for product teams that are trying to make sure that they can handle any security incident or any outage that they might be experiencing in their services. And so we're seeing a lot of these kinds of use cases emerge with Loop. and so you'll see us talk a little bit about more of these next month at the Build conference.
Good night out.
Yep.
Yeah, that's gonna be really exciting. And tomorrow here at Comms vNext, I'll talk a little bit more about meeting innovations. And one of the things I'm gonna live demo is our scenario library. And I'm really looking forward to doing some updates to that scenario library with all of these great loop scenarios and adding it into some of the places that are already there. Because I think people need inspiration, and I think people need to understand also that it's about your team agreements. If you're going to start using Loop for some particular thing, talk to the team about it, right? One of the things that I did when I started using Loop for my leads meeting was I said, listen, all of the leads content is going to be here in this Loop. We have our internal SharePoint site to tell all of Microsoft what we do. We have a working team that happens to have some content on it that's for the broader team. But our lead stuff is going to be here, not only because we like to test the new and emerging services and understand it for ourselves, but because it also enabled me to, add people really effortlessly, right? Without having to spin up another modern group, I could have my leads and one other person who had joined the team. I could handle that membership much more elegantly in this scenario, so that the technology was supporting my needs, not me having to alter my needs for the technology. Right. Really important. And so, but have that conversation, because one of the things that people comment on is, I don't know where to go for what I'm working on. Like, okay, you're using Loop and somebody's using SharePoint and somebody's just using Teams. Be really clear.
Yeah.
Right. And that's empathetic again to the people that you work with, so they know, hey, we know that when we're working with Karuana, she's going to be in Teams or Loop. That's where she's going to be. And you're not going to find me doing a bunch of project management, over email. That's just not my way.
Yeah.
It drives me a little crazy. Unless there's a loop in my email, then I'm okay. but and that helps you set expectations with your team members.
Awesome. There are so many mic drop moments throughout this whole conversation. I love the fact that we talked about, though, not just having it help you with getting the information collected, but then to actually organize it. That, to me, you spend so much time trying to organize things, and that is a huge mic drop moment in my book.
One other maybe for you to consider with this too, and as we're talking through it, like from a product development standpoint, one of the things that we thought a lot about, and this is not like typical productivity software. Mm-hmm. This is really much more like a communications tool. Because like when we think about the flow of work, and how work gets done. And I spent years of my life working on mobile, particularly working on mobile chat and communications, and thinking about like, okay, the design of this experience is really about how do you reduce the cycle time for teams to get to their outcome. And the patterns that we've been looking at are really, and inspired by, are really much more around communications than they are about authoring, content authoring.
That is a good point to consider.
Excellent point. It's so true.
We are getting short on time, and this is a conversation where I feel like we could just keep going on and on and on. And I have to imagine that those that are watching are kind of like, okay, I'm convinced. Where do I get started? How do we get this thing kicked off internally? How do we stay up to speed? Because like you said, it's not only are we having new announcements next month, it is constantly changing and updating and getting better. How do people get plugged in? Where do they get started?
I want to actually show some slides that we had in the keynote before,
great.
Ron, you can speak through those.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so you switch to my computer.
All right, great. So the best place to get started is to go to loop.microsoft.com, and there you will be able to access the Loop app, assuming that you are either business standard or business premium licensed, or M365, E3, E5, or for education, A3 and A5 licenses. And that's where you can experience the Loop app itself and create a Loop workspace and do the scenarios that Karuana talked about and that you demoed, Jake. If you want to try Loop Components, you can use Loop Components if you have an Office or M365 license. So these are broadly available inside our existing tools, and so you can have that experience as well. And then to try Copilot, that requires a Copilot license, so an M365 Copilot license. And so to go through the demo of what you showed, Jake, would require an M365 license and Copilot.
And, I love that these are product makers. They go directly to the product, but I'm a human person who does user enablement. So I'm going to say that's awesome. You can do that, especially if you're like a more advanced user or what have you.
Right.
But for the rest of the humans on the planet, visit adoption.microsoft.com, go to the product drop down and click on Microsoft Loop.
Yep.
That's going to get you adoption materials. It's going to help you understand when we're going to do the next event out in the community. It's going to direct you, and we're continuing to update this page with great materials for you to think about how you're going to do it. And then if you have champions in your organization, I suggest that those champions really take a look at this and pick a project to do amongst themselves so that then they understand it, much like how we did with my leads.
Yeah.
That's
It's a great way to get started.
You do, and there is, what we called it earlier, I don't know where to get started. I'm a little unsure of how to even, peel the layers back here. So taking a practice run, right, is a good idea there.
And having the help desk folks and the champions in an organization really understand it, that's only going to make the adoption more broadly easier.
Awesome.
And they're going to get so much value from it. They're going to love it like I do.
There we go. That's where you're going to get started. That's how you can get plugged into the community. I want to thank you all for being here again on the keynote side. Thank you for all, and to Karuana, thank you. I'm looking forward to your session tomorrow. Good content there. Any final comments before we shut this thing down?
No, I just thank you all for all the work that you do here. You make a great show. You're fabulous examples of people who are leaders in our community. We appreciate you so much. Like this is not your day job. This is extra work for all of you. You all have day jobs, but you bring everyone together. You have for all these years, and we really appreciate you at Microsoft. It's one of the reasons that we say we have the best community in tech is because of people like you and Adam and everyone who comes together here, and we're really grateful. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. It is a community event for the community, by it, and so it means a lot. Thank you. But
You're welcome.
I have hat hair to solve for now, so we're going to shut
I don't
this
know
thing
why
down
you took your hat off. Put
because
your hat
of
back
this.
on.
I can't get it over my hat.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, another reason to have more friendly earphones. Right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.